Now, for the first time in 20 years, Real Madrid is heading into a contested presidential election. Florentino Pérez has said if someone buys the smallest part, say 5%, then that could fix some of the problems. Enrique Riquelme's come back saying he's crossed a red line, he'll do the opposite, and that he's announcing this week that he'll go to a notary to put in writing in public that he would never sell any part of Real Madrid to a third party. Election day takes place on Sunday, the 7th of June, and Sid Lowe joins us now from Madrid. So, Sid, what can we read into those two comments? One from the standing president and the other, the man who's trying to be president.
Yeah, well, if we take Riquelme's stance in this, and I think it's probably a good place to start, is to talk about these elections as being not so much a case of the two candidates, but a case of whether or not you are in favour of Real Madrid remaining entirely owned by its members, or whether you're in favour of Real Madrid opening itself up to investment from outside. Now, of course, this is something that I think is very interesting, because even Florentino Pérez, who of course is the president that is now proposing a situation in which he would sell 5% of the club and turn membership effectively into a share of the club rather than a membership of the club. Even he is talking about this in terms of defending the members, in terms of keeping the club in the hands of members. But he says that he wants to sell 5% of the club. Now, he's not actually talking about this in terms of bringing investment in, but in terms of understanding the value of the club and then using that to apply a new model to Real Madrid, which would mean that for all of those members, let's say for argument's sake, 95, 100,000 members, instead of all of them being one member, one vote, they would be one member, one share. But of course, that will come up against 5% of the shares being in the hands of some sort of private capital. This is, I think, going to be the central issue for the rest of the presidential elections. It's not a particularly exciting issue, I think, for a lot of fans, in terms of normally in the presidential elections, we see offers of signings, players that might come in, a new manager, these kind of promises. But I think it's structurally, in terms of the way the club is set up, I think it's absolutely significant.
Is that going to divide the fans then, Sid? Because surely something they've always taken a pride in is that it is 100% owned by the fans.
Yeah, and I think that's very important, as I say, Kay. This is one of the reasons why Florentino is projecting this as being a way of protecting the fans. Now, I think we can pick through some of Florentino's arguments. So one of the things he says, first of all, is he says that if we sold 5%, this would just be a way of valuing the club. Now, there are other ways of valuing the club, but this would give you a market value of what the club is. That's the way that he's suggesting this. He's also saying that a big investor that would come in, whether it's a bank or whether it's a company or whether it's an investment fund or whether it's a hedge fund or whatever it may be, would be basically buying 5% of the club, according to him, in return for nothing. Now, of course, I don't think anyone truly believes that any company pays that kind of money in return for absolutely nothing. He then says, well, it wouldn't dilute the power of the fans and the power of the season ticket holders, because it would only be 5%. But of course, it would be 5% that is a consolidated block within the ownership of the club, rather than the other 95% of what would be the owners having their ownership fragmented across 95% of the people. And so I think it does pose very serious questions about what this really means, about why they are doing it. Florentino isn't saying that he wants to do this to bring investment in, but very clearly does want to bring investment in. And I think you're right that there are a lot of fans who are put off by this. And this is one of the reasons why Riquelme is making this the central part of his campaign. It's not really about what he can offer in terms of a sporting director. It's not what he can offer in terms of a player. It's not what he can offer in terms of manager. It's about him saying, listen, this is something that we need to stop in terms of the structure of the club. Now, is that to say that absolutely all of the fans think, oof, Riquelme's right, that all of the fans think this is a bad idea? No, because some, I think, welcome a degree of investment. Some believe that this would be a degree of investment that would maintain their ownership of the club. But you're absolutely right, Kay, that idea that this is a fan-owned club that isn't in the hands of private capital is sacrosanct to Real Madrid fans. And I think that is why it's become the central issue of this campaign.
Is Riquelme causing any sleepless nights for Florentino Pérez at the moment, Sid?
Well, that kind of depends on how you define sleepless nights. If we're looking at this and thinking, is he a threat to Florentino Pérez, it depends on what you consider to be a threat. Now, I think in terms of the election results, nobody truly anticipates anything other than a Florentino Pérez victory. This is a guy that's been president for 2 decades. It's been incredibly successful. The last 2 years, it's true, there have been lots of problems, but it's been incredibly successful in that period. Of course, 6 European Cups in 11 years. I think there's a degree of faith and a degree of trust in Florentino Pérez. So I think in that sense, he wouldn't lose presidential elections. I think he would still win. But I do think this is a slight concern for him because, of course, what we're seeing is exactly these kind of conversations we're having now. The fact that we're on here talking about this, Kay, is significant because this is a plan that Florentino has that he wants to put in place, and he's now got opposition to it. He's now got people questioning it. He's now been exposed and put in a position where he has to defend this project. And to be perfectly honest, his defence of it hasn't been entirely convincing. And so I think it's concerning for Florentino because it doesn't look great. I think it's concerning to Florentino because it does suggest the emergence of a power bloc that can maybe at least stand up to him, even if they're not likely to win. But I don't think for a minute that he believes, or in truth that anyone else believes, that he will lose these presidential elections.
Forgive me if I am to doubt and perhaps show a little bit of cynicism in thinking that 5% stays at 5%.
Is it a slippery slope, do you think?
See, and that's, once you open that door, and once you say, well, if for 5% we got this much, imagine what we can get for 10%. Imagine what we can get for 15%. When does it stop? And Florentino Pérez is a businessman. And so there is something very valuable to, I think, to Real Madrid fans and the members of Real Madrid to say, this is ours. To just kind of put it out there to outside investment, it's no longer ours. It's ours plus, ours adjacent. And there's somebody else who's also going to be involved. And for Florentino Pérez or anybody who says, well, this 5% or however much the percentage is, to say that it's an exchange of nothing, nonsense. When there is, and as I'm sure there will be, a transaction in the millions or billions, you think it's for nothing? You think it's just for the good of mankind? No. It's a transaction for a reason. And by definition, a transaction is, they give me this, I give you that. I scratch your back, you scratch my back. This whole idea is indeed a slippery slope, and it's one that if Riquelme and his people are able to package and message correctly, they may gain some traction. I don't think it's enough, but they may gain some traction.
Have you ever been in a situation, Stevie, where you're a player or a manager under all these things going on up top? And what do you do when you are, if you have?
To be honest, when you're playing and you're coaching, you're concentrating on what your job is, you know, particularly at a place like Real Madrid, because if you don't get that job done, it doesn't matter what's going on up the stair or who the president is. If you're not winning games, winning titles, you're going to get the sack and you're going to be out the door. The one thing I would say, though, is Perez, he must be a smart man, but he's not as smart as he thinks he is, you know. It so smells big time. When you've got the gall to turn around to 100,000 people, as Sid pulled up earlier, let's say 100,000 people, and say, we're going to give 5% away, but we're not giving them anything, and actually think they're going to believe you. I'm sorry, that stinks. So, yeah, it's not clever. It
also comes from the same man who, in his press conferencing, while he was ranting and raving and going this way and that way, that we're going to do elections, right? That's what we're going to do. If you start doing that, it's because you have zero belief that anybody can threaten you, that you are in any way touchable. He feels as if he is untouchable. Therefore, he can go on his rant and rave and crazy thoughts here and crazy talk over there because he doesn't feel that he's in any danger. Otherwise, he would never have called for these elections. Never. If he thought he was in any jeopardy, even though he was very defiant and saying, those that oppose me, come out from the dark. Let me see who you are. Let me see who you are. Well, now he knows who it is. And he is in no way, in his mind, threatened by any of this. He thinks of himself as untouchable. We'll see. Yeah, and just quickly on that point as well, Sid, Enrique Riquelme has come out himself, even though he can oppose him because he has the money and the 20 years as a member to be able to do so. He said that even that in itself doesn't help people to go against Florentino Pérez.
No, and actually, I think to pick up on Ali's point and to extend it, I think Florentino has probably already taken a little bit of a hit, because I think he suspected that he would challenge Enrique Riquelme to come out, and Enrique Riquelme would be unable to put together a candidacy in time, and he would say, well, there we go then, and we carry on. And I think it was his idea of killing that candidacy before it could even really get on its feet. So I think the very fact that Florentino is confronted by elections is already a little bit of a surprise. Now, I'm not going to call it a defeat, but I think it's more than he was expecting to have to deal with. And I think the election campaign isn't doing him any favours, because, as Ali's just said, when he speaks, it's not particularly convincing, it's not particularly impressive, but I still think he will probably win. And so much of this issue around the 5%, I think is really quite damaging for the club. But at least 20 years later, we're actually in the position where it's being talked about, and we're actually in a position where people will go to the ballot box to decide.
One thing that does come when there is a new president or a standing president in these elections is the promise, as mentioned, as usually these are the things of players that might come in or coaches that might come in. We're hearing today that Ibrahima Konate could be going to Real Madrid if Florentino Pérez retains his seat. It would be as a free agent after leaving Liverpool. What more do we know about this situation, Sid?
Well, let's put it in very simple terms, shall we, Kay? What we know about this situation is that really and truly it's got nothing to do with the elections. The only thing now is, of course, it has to be on hold until the elections are done, until Florentino is confirmed. But this is a transfer that the wheels are set in motion before the elections. The fact that there are elections only really matters in terms of the timing of it, and that this deal isn't a presidential promise, if you see what I mean. This isn't an electoral promise. This isn't someone saying, hey, vote for me and I'll bring this guy in. This guy was coming in anyway.
Another free agent from Liverpool going to Real Madrid. Are you bothered about this, Stevie, losing Konate?
Quite honestly, very difficult to say I'm distraught. I mean, let's be honest.
So you will sleep tonight?
I'm shocked. I'm shocked that Konate is going to start for France in the World Cup. I mean, if Konate had joined Liverpool at the start of last season, by the end of the season, people will be saying, who signed this guy? I mean, quite frankly, Konate's had an absolute stinker. And the only reason Real Madrid are signing him is because they think maybe that was maybe a one-off, but he's on a free. That's it. If he wasn't on a free, they wouldn't be signing Ibrahima Konate.